Welcome to Slow Saturday Nights, Abhinav. It's really good to have you here. And I think, as I've explained before, Slow Saturday Nights is about hitting the pause button and kind of focusing on the journey, something that you've chosen to do as part of your day to day life. So tell us about your journey to here, the early days as a in software development and how you kind of kept this parallel track going and where you are today.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to talk to you and talk to you about my journey. Well, well, it's an opportunity for me to look back and see where I came from and how I started. And I am a musician, and for a musician, the most important question is, what got you into music, or you know, what was the reason that you started playing music? Because over a period of time, no matter what you're doing, you tend to fall astray. You tend to, explore. It's natural to explore so many different things, but it's always good to remember where you started from and why you play music. I remember when I went to a music school many years ago. The first class in the morning, the first question the teacher asked the students, "Why do we play music?" And I was like, "What? This is." I thought this was going to be a music lesson, but the teacher started with the philosophy of music and why do we play music. And you know what? There is no perfect answer to this question, and everybody has to dig deep inside them and figure out why. And the only reasonable answer that I could come up with is because I love music, and that's it.
Right.
You don't need to ask why. When you love something really from deep down inside, it's deep enough, and you don't really need reasons to do it anymore. And it's very important to remember what you love, and that's what the teacher told me, and I remember it to this day, is because the path of a musician is full of hardships, and as is the path of any uh, you know any explorer, any entrepreneur, any job seeker, or anybody who's trying to get something done. And you're going to be able to overcome challenges only if you are connected with that deep inside feeling on why you're doing something, and because that gives you a sense of purpose, that gives you a sense of identity, and it gives you the risk-taking ability to keep going.
Music was something that you
Yeah.
grew up with, right? It was a part of the fabric of your day to day life from a really young age. You were in the school band as well, right?
Yeah, I started playing music in a school band. I used to play the bagpipes and the flute, but I was always fascinated with drums.
Hmm.
Growing up in the 80s and the 90s, that was the golden era of rock music and pop music, and of course, a lot of Indian music also started flourishing back then. A.R. Rahman was a big name that shot to fame suddenly in the 90s. So I grew up listening to Michael Jackson, A.R. Rahman, and then moved over to some rock music with good old Pink Floyd, and some heavy metal in the college, and I started playing drums in Kharagpur.
That
He
was an
was
interesting way to
yeah.
start. Actually, somebody prompted you or pushed you in the direction of percussion, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, one of my senior hostel mates was a guitar player, and he just asked me to accompany him on the guitars, and he just took me to the music room and just asked me, hey, start playing the drums. He wanted to check out a new amp or a new guitar or something. And I just sat on the drum kit and I started playing, and that was it. It just felt natural to me. It felt good, and I really felt connected. And that's it. That was the day I started, and I haven't stopped playing since.
And you've kind of been able to sustain two interests in parallel, right? It's not like this was a unidimensional, unidirectional interest that you pursued. music was one side of the coin for you, and you continued to do software development. Talk about this, the way that you identified and explored those synergies.
Yeah, I quickly realized that music and technology, they're really made for each other. It's like a match made in heaven. Because the concepts of music are also based on, constructs like loops and sequences and samples and things like that. And these are pretty much the same concepts that we use in programming languages. You know, we have threads, and we have processes, and we have events that are you know put on a timeline. And it's all about articulating the timeline with certain events and looking at it in relationship. So this synergy, this just started happening automatically for me because I had started as a software engineer, and then on the side I would always come back home and play drums. And on most days, one of the two would fire for me. Like if I would have a great day at office, or if not, then I would have a great day at home playing music. One of the two would keep me going. And I saw this. There was some kind of a feedback loop happening, where I could get new ideas from one side and use it to the other side. Like I could come up with a new time signature or a new groove or a new rhythm progression on the drum kit, and next day somehow it would help me solve a problem at the workplace,
Right.
uh, or at least help me think differently, or think in a different manner to approach the problem differently.
And like 17 years down, you've been juggling the two, and then you kind of make this really big decision. What prompted you to get there? I mean, what changed? What shifted that made you feel that okay, now's the time. This is it. I've got to kind of give this my all.
Yeah, I always well, if I really take a hard look back at what I wanted to be when I was growing up, I thought I would. I mean, I said to myself I wanted to become a musician, and at other times I would also tell myself that I wanted to become a scientist. And if this was playing in the back of my mind, and at some point I realized that working in the corporate sector long enough. I worked in the software industry for 16, 17 years. And one day I realized that what is the best possible outcome for me in this career path. So I saw myself at the top of the corporate ladder. Maybe I'll become the CEO, or maybe I'll become the CTO, or of a large company, and that would be a great outcome. But it was not for me. It didn't really float my boat. It didn't really float my imagination. That's not what I dreamed about.
Right.
At night. At night I would always dream about performing music on stage, and on bigger stages in front of bigger crowds, and connecting with the audience, and feeling that energy. That would give me a higher sense of satisfaction than being a CEO or a CTO. Although that would also be a great result, because I really loved my job, and it was a really hard decision for me to pick one over the other. But eventually I had to take a deeper look inside me and see, and I gotta give my dreams a chance. Like what do I really dream about? I really have to work towards it consciously. So that was sort of the key moment for me to switch.
Right. And you reached that point where you said, okay, it's about time that we do this. But before that, I think you ventured, you set up your own space as you kind of try to find your way to this sweet spot where, you've kind of combined multiple of your passions in a way that builds on everything that you've done before. I mean, it's admirable, really, and really, really elegant, right? So, talk to us a little bit about the aesthetics of, how you saw soft parallels between software development and music, and the setting up, the composition, and your first startup to here?
Well, I thought I would pursue music full time, and this is a term which I no longer use. Like full time is, I don't know what that means anymore, but from the context of a corporate guy, it means something. So I pursued music full time for about a couple of years. I did a lot of stage shows, and I performed with different bands. I started my own band. I worked on a couple of albums. I collaborated with an international producer for a jazz album. I put out my own experimental music album and things like that. But eventually it just happened that one fine day I realized that music is much bigger than an art form, or as a form of you know entertainment, or as a form of pleasant sonic experience. uh, I realized that music is actually also a science. It involves a very fine science of harmony and a science of resonance. And I started digging deeper into some of the concepts of how the system of music works and what makes music work. Right? I mean, that's a question that not many musicians ask. Because we take so many things for granted. We are all I mean, we take this universe for granted. We take and by extension, we take a lot of universal knowledge for granted. But there is a way to dig into it and understand it in a very simple way, using music and geometry. I suddenly discovered that music and geometry are sort of two parallels, which are which can be considered as universal languages. You know, because we do not have good vocabulary in English, and of course, science has its own vocabulary, but it's very limited. Uh, when we talk about the language of the universe, we often say mathematics is the language of the universe. But then again, we've sort of made it so objective that we've lost the ability to connect with mathematics at a deeper personal level. So that's where music and geometry, they become a bridge for anybody to connect with the universe and the language of the universe, and eventually, which is pure mathematics. Music and geometry, I found they were the perfect mediums to try and explore that side of the world, that part of the knowledge, which was also missing from the mainstream, because the mainstream always it did not the mainstream education does not focus on music as a science. It does
Right.
not focus on you know I mean, we talk about holistic education, but this term has become a little bit of a catchphrase, and it's become almost a stereotype where people have to educational institutes, they advertise, hey, we teach Sanskrit, and your students will learn music. They will have 5 music lessons in a week, and blah blah. Well, all that is good, but what is missing is the integration. Like, how does the music connect to science? How does the music connect to mathematics? How does learning Sanskrit help you in physics, or in cosmology? Or that integration is missing.
I think one of the things that actually stood out in our conversations was the fact that you've kind of looked for the natural order of things, right? I mean, you've established that all of the things around you were interlinked, and you were able to actually discover the synergies between your music and the practice of music and creating music to creating software in parallel. And one kind of contributed to the other, and they fed off each other to kind of help push you in certain directions. If you can talk a little bit about the way that you understood those, began to understand those synergies as a student, and as you kind of came into your work life and try to balance all of these interests and passions. Maybe you can talk to us a little bit about that and how that kind of influenced where you are today.
Well, it happened over a period of time. I mean, I was always interested was always curious about the universe and how, if it almost, feels like there is some kind of a game being played in the universe. There's some kind of a universal order, and or I used to think that there is a universal flow of time. And we are all flowing. We are all like, flowing in a river of time. But where is that river? You can't see it. And then I discovered, Einstein's theory, and which had, a big impact on me, where he completely, destroyed the concept of universal time, and he introduced relativity. And I didn't understand it well enough to internalize it. But eventually, I realized that time is the key. Understanding time is the key, and that has been sort of the holy grail of all knowledge systems for thousands of years. And we seem to be getting closer to the truth, but we are also missing some key concepts, and maybe some of these concepts cannot be. We need a different way of thinking, because the same way of thinking, the way we have thought about, you know uh, time has sort of led us to a dead end, and where we you know at this day, if you ask a physicist what is time, you're not going to get a good answer, because perhaps our thinking and our approach towards time has led us to a dead end in a closed system. But I thought we need a fundamentally different way of looking at time, as a system which is open.
Hmm.
So the universe could be thought of as an open system, and
Right.
and it all boils down to, understanding the concept of infinity,
Right.
because that is the one concept that that we all struggle with. When we are not wired, our logical brain is not wired to handle infinity. I mean, all the mathematicians would agree with me. There are hundreds of paradoxes that come into the picture when you bring in infinity into an equation, and physics is also reaches a dead end when it encounters an infinity in an equation, and we don't know how to deal with it. So the concept of infinity is key to understanding what the universe is.
Hmm.
And so I thought we needed a different vocabulary, and then I was always good at geometry. I remember when I was in engineering, I aced the engineering drawing exam. That was the only subject that I cracked, and so I always, enjoyed solving problems geometrically. It
Hmm.
would always be more satisfying, and so even in when I started working in software technology, I would put more focus on the design aspect of systems, and I could never, I could never write software that somebody just handed me a document, a requirements document, and say, hey, like, just build this to specifications. That would not be a fun exercise for me. I always enjoyed, putting my own spin on things, try and try to, design it the way I think it can be made more efficient. And and this is again a great parallel between, software and music, is
Right.
where software aspires for efficiency. Music interprets the same thing as beauty. So beauty and efficiency, I found they were interchangeable terms almost. When something is beautiful, it is also efficient. And and I started seeing some patterns that came out of music, and especially in rhythm. Rhythm is all about, small numbers. It's all about basic patterns. And when I was learning the tabla a few years ago, I started writing down how many patterns can I make with a certain number of bowls. Right. So in tabla we have a limited vocabulary of certain bowls, and when I wrote down all the patterns, and I counted them, the Fibonacci numbers, they just came out, and uh, and I realized that the Fibonacci numbers are associated with the way, the nature uh, produces a lot of beauty, and,
Hmm.
and, and a lot of efficiency. The way plants and animals and trees and all organic life grows, it's based on Fibonacci numbers. and I saw those numbers. They just came out of simple constructs of rhythm
Right.
in music. So and uh, so beauty and efficiency, they almost became, two sides of the same coin for me,
Right.
and that helped me, see the parallel between technology and music even more.
Right. Right. And you've since then kind of pursued finding more about the beauty and the symmetry through music, right? You actually
Hmm.
set up a studio where you that was, I think, your first startup,
Hmm.
kind of, where you said, okay, this is going to be it, the pursuit of beauty and aesthetics through music. Geometry kind of started happening around that time as well as
Yeah.
a very active pursuit. Um, but I think one of the really, really important points that you made was that you realized that you needed to juxtapose these two things, right? It wasn't just the pursuit of one kind of felt
Hmm.
limiting to you after coming through so many years of having refine those synergies to a space where you were super productive in both. So talk to us a little bit about Reverb and how you started that journey and where that took you, the kind of coming back to geometry and music and software
Hmm.
design, all of those concepts again.
Yeah, sure. So I was, from as early as engineering days, I would sit in the library and read about acoustics, and acoustics is where you learn about sound and spaces, and how spaces can affect sound in terms of reflections, and how sound can be managed acoustically, and then of course with the digital equipment. Uh, so I was very much interested, in having a background in electrical engineering also helped. I sort of grasped onto processes, concepts of signal processing and things like that, and so I had always had a portable home studio set up with me from as early as I can remember. I would play electronic instruments. Of course, I started initially with an acoustic drum kit, but the acoustic drum kit, being it's an acoustical nightmare to play in a closed space, especially in a residential area. I remember I had to switch like 4 houses in one year.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I like your
when I was
creative
in
solution to
yeah
that problem, the basement.
yeah yeah I and then I just figured, like, I'm not going to be able to play drums at home, so might as well play them in office. So I talked to my office, and I got my drum kit into the office basement. So as soon as my work got over, I would just go from the top floor to the bottom floor and to the basement, and that worked out really well for me at the time. So yeah, I always needed some solution for myself to be able to play. The loudest instrument on earth is the drum kit, and to be able to play that is not easy. I mean, the number one reason why a lot of my friends who also started playing drums are not playing it anymore is because of this reason, because it's a logistical nightmare. To manage the acoustic is very very challenging.
Right.
Uh, so over a period of time, I kind of learned all about the art and science of music production, and would start. I started making some covers, some songs, collaborations with friends of mine, and then when I was in the U.S. for a while, and I got to collect a lot of gear, learn because the U.S. has a great market for used musical instruments, especially electronic instruments are really really cheap over there, and so I still have a huge collection of gear. I got all of that back to India, and then one of my friends in Pune, we co-founded this studio called the Reverb Sound Studio, And at the time, it didn't feel like a startup. I actually realized when a friend of mine was visiting me a couple of years later, and he told me, "Hey, you did a startup." I said, "What? Did I do a startup?" I thought, "Okay, this is a studio which I always wanted to do," and we ended up making a commercial recording studio, and I learned even more about music production. I came in touch with a lot of key people from the sound engineering industry. I learned about sound engineering, uh, you know, uh, properly for the first time, and and yeah, I mean that was probably my first startup, but I
Right.
still don't think of it as a startup because
Right.
it came out from a personal need as well as a passion which I would have done in any way. If not commercially, then personally I would have, and which I ended up doing. I ended up building a second studio in my house, which I use these days for my own personal music production work.
Right. Right. And I think one of the really nice things that you touch upon is how you realized that music was something that you needed to share for it to actually translate into value for yourself, right? And there was an aspect of a completely separate spiritual journey that brought you to that realization and the point that you are at today, which kind of combines all of these passions that you've had. So, talk to us a little bit more about that part of the journey and how you decided that music was it, sharing, and why you made those specific decisions along the way till now.
Well, yeah. So all this, is uh, you know it's transformative in a certain way. Not just from a personal growth point of view. I mean, you grow as a person when you play music, when you understand what story is being told, you know, through music, uh, but also from having a background of you know of a long corporate life. Uh, we're all trained to think about success, and we all have to sort of come up with our own definitions of success. So the definition which I really liked and sort of latched onto was, success is to be able to find your gifts and use it for the maximum benefit of others. So I know this sounds like a little bit of spiritual in nature, but hey, it makes sense. It talks about the collaborative nature of this universe, which I had come to identify with. Because my my lens to look at the world is through music, and the fundamental lesson that we learn from music is that everything is a collaboration. Even if you're doing a solo project, it's a self collaboration. Parts of you within yourself are collaborating with each other to come out and tell a story. And if you're able to package that in a certain way, then you must use it for the maximum benefit of others. So music, as we know, it's a great unifying force in the world. It really has. I don't think there's a way to measure it, but the power of music is immense. Uh, you know, there was a famous line in a movie which says that one great song can change the world. Uh, you know, going back to the days of the Beatles, going back to uh, the music revolution that happened in the 60s, 70s. People felt this force for real. This is for real, and every time and again we are reminded of this of the power of music, and when I looked at it as a force of unification, and I saw that I could play a part in it, then of course I consider that as a gift, and which I should use to in whatever way I can to for the maximum benefit of others, and that's what success is looks like to me.
I think
Yeah.
another point that you made about reaching the realization that the journey itself was what you were after, the ability to kind of hit pause on all of the things that you were already doing when you made the shift, and to actually allow yourself, to give yourself the leeway to come to this point where you could say, hey, this is what I want to do, and then trust yourself and allow yourself. Talk to us a little bit about that, because I think that was really, really interesting. And that's something that a lot of people struggle with, right? So, your last day at work when you announced to the world, and what were the reactions, and how did people react and respond to what you were telling them about the choices you were making?
Yeah, that was quite interesting. My last day at work, I sent out my goodbye email, and I got an overwhelming response for that email, and not just people writing back to me. People physically came up to my cubicle and they shook hands with me, and they really wanted to congratulate me, and they wanted to wish me well, and when they did that, I could see that, hey, they are actually doing this for themselves. I mean, I could see that they would have also thought of doing something similar, and perhaps for whatever reason, they've not done it yet. I saw that there's always an element of suppressed desires and suppressed dreams, which everyone carries in some form or the other, and for me to see that directly, that my decision brought out a sort of a reaction from all these other people, and they really came and connected with me on this note. On my last day of work, I worked in the company for like some 7 years, and I would never meet usually people outside of work opportunities, but this was different. And in my last day of work, I probably made more friends than an entire year of working in the same office.
Right.
So, so that really struck a chord with me, and I wrote a blog about it as well. It's called The Geometry of Dreams, and I thought that we need to dream first of all. Yes, we all do that, but we also need to pay attention to what what message is contained in our dreams, because often behind those dreams there is some kind of an opportunity or some kind of a gift waiting to come out and show itself to you. So, for example, if you're an artist and you're working in a desk job, your dream would probably be a gateway for the artist in you to show itself to you. And once you would see that, you cannot unsee it. And each one of us is an artist in one way or the other. And we know that this world needs artists as much as it needs technical people or science seeking people. So for me, the wish that is behind the dream, it's often set very early on. I mean, if you remember your childhood, I'm pretty sure that there were a couple of things that stand out then, and that are still shaping the way you think today. They are either suppressed or they are out in the open. Either way, they're still shaping. They're still wanting to come out through us, and we just need to pause and give it a chance and give it a real go sometimes, and because you don't want to take it to your grave that, hey, I had a dream when I was a child, and I still have that dream, and I didn't really do anything about it. That probably won't go down well on on your whatever gravestone or whatever. So yeah, I mean we have one life, and we have limited time.
And talk to us about that, and how, the idea of your startup, and the way that you kind of encourage this kind of a synergistic exchange, the concept of creativity, and how you were kind of taking that message out in a way that people can accept it, internalize it, and work with it. Talk about a little bit of the basic thinking, the premise on which you've based all of this.
So my latest startup is called AboutTime. It's a project I started a couple of years back. In fact, a few months before the pandemic started. So I started. Eventually, I put together enough content and figured out a way to share it with as many people as possible, because I thought this synergetic relationship of music and mathematics and science and art and everything under the sun, to see it as one unified system, is really a message worth sharing. And it has really, I mean, it impacted me on a very deep level. So I thought it would be of great value for others to see it as well. So I started doing workshops, and and the main message that I wanted to share with the people is that to understand creation, our own creativity is the best tool to understand the universe. You can't read it in a book. Nobody's going to tell you and tell you, hey, this is how reality works. No, you have to figure it out for yourself, and the best way to do that is to unleash your own creative powers. And of course, a little bit of storytelling is always good, to put it in a context, so if creativity is a form of storytelling, then that could be our superpower, right? So
Right.
not just a gift. Music is not just a gift; it could become a superpower, and that is true for any creative pursuit. So if this universe is a magical universe, then we are magicians. But then if we are magicians, what is our superpower? Well, then I figured that storytelling or creative arts is our superpower, and we
Right.
can we can really use it. It's very difficult to quantify it, but that's what makes it hard, and that's what makes it magical. If you can figure out a way to package your creative skills and put it in a box, and because creativity refuses to be boxed, it refuses to be confined to a boundary. It wants to just flow
Stretch
into
out.
the open. And
Right.
right. And but then that's where the yin and yang come into the picture, the container and the content. When the right match appears, you have something tangible and something really, that's where creation thrives. And that leads to a very deep understanding of creation, and leads to a very deep understanding of who we are, and what is our place in the universe. And that is very healing. I found that being able to use this to remove the blinders, to see the universe as a magical place, and realize what is our role in it, what is our place in it. It's extremely empowering. It's very, very healing, because most of our troubles, mentally, physically, they are all related to limited identity, because we
Hmm.
identify ourselves as something which we are not. We are bigger than that. So it's a way to transcend boundaries and really unify the concept of who we are.
Right. Right. And with About Time, you've kind of started helping other people build these connects and understand and explore the synergies that they have between the areas that constitute their lives. How has that been shaping up? And especially given the backdrop of COVID over the past year or so, and that's when you've literally been reaching out and doing all of this stuff. And you had to kind of make a switch from meeting live to virtual only. And how has all of this kind of translated on the ground in the interactions that you've had, and what has the impact been?
Yeah, it's been a mixed bag. I had started hosting in-house workshops before the pandemic, and then I switched to the online platform. So that switch required me to do a reset on the way I present some of my content. And but it also gave me new opportunities. I learned a lot about streaming music live. Went deeper into the technical side of how music can be best shared over a platform like Zoom, and then of course using some live audio visual exercises, which I do in my workshops now. Things like video effects and audio effects, and like if this was a workshop, I would be able to take your audio and stream it back through my audio, and I would be able to patch it, in different ways, and same with the video. I would be able to capture your video and do some funky things with it, and make some geometrical patterns. So it's all done in a good spirit of fun and exploration. And the the main thing is to keep it fun, keep it imaginative, and keep the curiosity going, because eventually that's what gets us to keep asking the question long enough, and eventually we are the ones who answer it ourselves. So yeah, it's been great. Online platform. It is limited. I can't really make good eye contact with people and see if they are actually understanding, because some of these concepts can be a little heavy. But I found that if people are not able to sort of understand what I'm saying, then maybe there is a better way of saying it which I have not discovered yet. So that's an opportunity for me to improve my my style of saying things, or to be able to
Connect.
present, yeah, better.
Yeah. And were you always like this, Abhinav? Were you always somebody who kind of rolled with the punches and, made the best of what is? Have you always been this personality, or is this something that all of these years of discipline have kind of brought into you? Because I think one of the big aspects of being a musician is empathy, right? Especially if you're performing live.
Hmm.
Have you always been this person, or has that kind of built up over the years? What are the changes in yourself?
Uh, well, yeah. I mean, I've always been very very patient. I guess that that was probably that is still probably one of my superpowers. I can and the creative process of music making is, it just humbles you, because you can't rush it, and when it'll happen when it'll happen. You have to be really really patient and just trust the process, and you don't know what the end result may or may not look like. You do have an idea, but this creative process can be it refuses to get tamed, but yet you have to become one with it. You have to let it flow through you, and for that you have to have an extremely open mindset. You have to be able to switch paths if needed, even at a later stage. I'll say I'm making a song, and a few weeks down the line, I just I realize that I've not made enough progress, and I just keep making some changes, and then I keep unmaking those changes, and I'm just stuck. So these kind of blocks are always there, and you just have to let it be for a while, and suddenly one day the song gets done in 5 hours. So after a month of struggling with it and not making progress, it just suddenly decides to show up, and there you go. It's these things happen all the time, and
Right.
all artists would somehow relate to it in some way or the other. And I think that's what makes it difficult, but it's also a lot of fun. And if you have the time, if you take the time, if you give yourself the time, there are really good things that happen through the creative process. That's been a very very transformative experience, and it continues to be so.
So, also, I think one of the things we talked about was the ability to kind of allow yourself to pursue the passion. You started on this
Mhm.
particular aspect at a pretty late stage in life, right? It wasn't like your first job out of college and this was your passion. So it was a passion that you had lived with and you'd kind of made peace with. You'd integrated it into your life. And, there were these parallel aspects of life that evolved over the years for you. But one day you traded it all in and said, okay, this is it. What was the reaction and how did you reach that point where you said, okay, this is it? Pick one. I think you spoke about picking one, but the why of the picking one.
Uh, do you mean like final trigger or
Yeah.
some kind of okay? There's no real logic behind it, because uh, not all decisions are explainable logically fully. Sometimes you just feel it and go with it, and that's it. And that's I had I always knew that there is you know that there's an intuitive side to all of us, and which cannot be really put into words. I mean, I can try and explain it in so many different ways, but at the end of the day, it's just me and how I felt, about something, and I just went with it. And and I mean, I was a manager for many years, and that's and this is that uh, and this is the one thing that I learned about leadership is that decision making. You're hired to make decisions. Even if it's the wrong decision, sometimes it doesn't matter. But the fact that you have to make a decision is sometimes more important than going into analysis paralysis that we often find ourselves in. And uh, so yeah, I always as a manager, I would tell my manager that, hey, if I start explaining each and every decision of mine to you, then you might as well hire a robot. I'm here. I give me some leeway to make my own decisions and not put it down in an Excel sheet and tell you exactly why I made those decisions. Uh, so yeah, it's I mean, decision making happens in all kinds of ways, and I always had this gut feeling, and that gut feeling was not going anywhere, and I always knew that one day or the other I would jump into it and explore it in a more professional way. And uh, I remember I always went back to my childhood and my college days because they sort of gave me a compass of where do I stand as compared to what my dreams were when I was younger. And I sort of have to justify my choices based on that compass. Like when I was in school, the teacher asked all the students, "Hey, what do you want to do? What do you want to become when you grow up?" And everybody would say something or the other. And I remember, raising my hand and said, "Hey, I want to be a musician." And I was the only one in the class who said that. And that carried forward to college. I remember in my third year engineering course, a professor asked the entire class, where do you see yourself 10 years from now? And somebody said, hey, I see myself as a CEO of Microsoft, or somebody said I'll be a hot shot in some other big company, and so on. Uh, and I stood up and said, hey, I see myself receiving a Grammy Award in 10 years from now. And the professor looked at me, and wow, he was thrilled to hear that answer, because nobody else would give that kind of an answer. And from that day, I mean, I know it's not a big event. I didn't think of it as a big deal at the time, but it somehow programs your subconscious. For a young student to stand up in class and say this in front of his teacher, it plays on your mind, and I think about it sometimes even till this day. I mean, I know I've some when some of my friends, old timers, they meet me, they ask me, hey dude, where's your Grammy? and I tell them it's on the way.
Working towards
So
it.
I mean, yeah, I mean that's all you can do, right? You just have to invest in the process, and who knows what's going to happen tomorrow.
Perfect. Now, I know we've been talking a little bit, but it would be really, really great, Abhinav, if you can kind of play something for us. I know that we spoke about some of the music that inspired you to move back to India, right? It was the Rahman, post Rahman era, so to speak. But talk to us a little bit about that and maybe play something for us too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I remember listening to this album, uh, the soundtrack of a movie called Wake Up Sid, and I that was really a sort of a game changing moment for me in the sense that that's when I realized uh, that that some really good music is happening in India, and I was in the US at the time, and and that got me thinking into coming back to India, and I thought that if such great music is going to be produced from India, maybe I should be a part of it in some way, or I thought this could be start of a revolution in India because music goes through phases, and like we talk about the music of 90s and the 80s. Uh, as I mean, I think that was the golden period, and we sort of hit a lull after that. But then it's probably coming back up in different ways, and the independent music scene is thriving, or at least it was thriving until before the pandemic. And India has a lot to offer. It has to. I mean, we have the capacity to produce the whole new generation of world class musicians for the next 100 years. And I feel that revolution is happening right now in India, and I want to be a part of it.
Part of it.
So yeah, uh, let me see if I can play a little bit for you. This is a song which I had made back in, well, a few years ago, and it was inspired by the concept of fractals, right? So uh, maybe I can show you a little bit of geometry just to touch on what uh, what a fractal is. Let me see if I can share my screen. Well, this is my website. I just want to show you some of my drawings, and well, these are called buckyball constructions. I love constructing little shapes like this with magnetic balls. So for example, you see a cube over here. You see a triangular pyramid,
Hmm.
and this is a hexagon of hexagons, right?
Seed of life, fruit of life.
So hexagon and circle are very much related to each other. Whenever you arrange circles around uh, around each other, they always make hexagons, and this is an example of a hexagon. So so thinking about infinity is tough, but one of the most useful tools is fractals, and to think about that the whole is made up of parts, and the part looks like the whole, right? So to me, music is also a kind of a fractal where you have the entire a song which is made up of smaller sections, and it is made up of smaller sections, and it is made up of smaller sub songs and subsections, eventually coming down to a bar and a note and a sound, and eventually to nothing. So eventually silence, right? So from a 5 minute track to silence, there are stages of packaging. There are fractal packaging of silence. So that's what music is, and this is what inspired me to create this song. The song is called rain on, and it uses. I've used some nature sounds in this because a lot of nature sounds are fractal in nature. Like the sound of rain. You know, rain is just made of rain. And a river can be. The sound of a river is also fractal because it is a large stream made up of smaller streams, which is made up of smaller streams. Wind is also a fractal because again the same concept is there. So I used some of these sounds, and hope you enjoy it.
That was phenomenal. Thank you so much for playing that. Definitely an inspiration, evocative of the weather outside or the threat of rain.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that song was called Rain On, really inspired by rain, and so I wanted to connect with the with different phases of rainfall. Starting with the build up and the anticipation. And then a little bit of drizzle comes in, then the dance of thunder and lightning. It eventually builds up and goes into the downpour, and it just pours. The heavens come down to the earth, sort of a thing. So yeah, I mean, this is no words, but it also tells a story, right? So to me, music is a way for a piece of creation, which is me, to tell the story of creation, which is you, or maybe everybody else. Or so it is, you know, it is kind of recursive in nature. Like the creation is telling its own story to itself, and that's how I look at it. And to me, everything is telling a story of creation. Even inanimate objects. Like this, a pen, a mug. Everything is
Telling
a piece of
it's,
creation, and it is telling a story. Yeah,
yeah,
and that's how I connect it. That's how we can use it to understand everything at a deeper level.
right. But thank you so very much for that little glimpse into the clearly what has been a passion that's driven you through your life so far. Thank you for taking the time to share so candidly some of your thoughts and the way that you've kind of picked this direction for yourself. What would you leave as advice for somebody who's thinking of a startup or thinking of giving up on one particular stream in their lives to pursue a passion or a dream? What's your advice?
Well, my advice is, as simple as listen to your heart. We More often than not, we pretend that we that we are not listening, but actually the voice is always there. We sometimes drown it in noise. In fact, if you have a couple of minutes, I'll share another interesting story. I
Mhm.
when I built my home studio, I built the best possible soundproof room that I could possibly build for myself, and I built it. And my first day inside that space, it's a completely soundproof room. And when I sat behind my drum kit and I started, before starting to play the drums, I could hear a faint sound coming from a distance. I could hear that somebody in the distance is playing drums. I could hear the sound of drums. And then I thought to myself, hey, who is this other drummer in my neighborhood who's playing drums? And why am I hearing it inside my soundproof room? And I could never figure it out, but it was a very faint, sound. And, well, I ignored it. I went on with my business. And believe it or not, it took me a month before I realized that the sound that I was hearing, that I thought that there is another drummer in the neighborhood, that was literally the sound of my heart beating, which which I could hear in that chamber, in that soundproof chamber of mine for the first time, because I had eliminated all noise, and it was just pure sound. Whatever is inside the room, I could hear the room, and whatever inside the room is, it starts to talk to you. My heart was literally pounding, and I could hear it as the sound of drums. So there was actually a drummer inside me who wanted to make itself known to me once I figured out how to take care of the noise. So that's all you need to do. Figure out whatever works for you, whatever method works for you to filter out the noise. That inner voice is always there. It does not go away. It's always there for you to tap into it.
Right.
So yeah, so just listen to your heart, and
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 the rest will follow.
the rest will follow. Absolutely.
Yeah, I trust in the process. Thank you so much for taking us through your journey, Abhinav. It's been so interesting, and it's definitely a passion that you've managed to kind of keep alive through decades, right, of exploring other realities as well. And I do hope that we can meet again sometime soon, carry forward this conversation as About Time grows and evolves and changes into whatever your imagination can create next.
Sure, would love that. In fact, I would love to have you attend one of my workshops.
Sure,
And
absolutely.
thanks a lot. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thanks a lot for inviting me. And it always it feels good to share your own story, because eventually we are all storytellers, and
Right.
a story that you have lived is when told honestly is probably also a gift that needs to be shared. So thanks to you and your startup and your project to invite people to share their stories. I think that really is wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Abhinav. And that's it for today from Slow Saturday Nights. Thanks a ton. See you again.
All right, thanks.
Bye bye.